When someone asks you what you do for fun and you don't have an answer, something shifts inside you. It's subtle, a pause, a small sense of exposure, as if you just revealed something you were supposed to have but don't. You might laugh it off, change the subject, say you've just been busy, but later you think about it. Why don't I have hobbies? And more importantly, what does that say about me? Not having hobbies is rarely about being boring. It's rarely about lacking personality. Most of the time, it reflects something much deeper in your psychological wiring. For many people, free time was never truly free. Maybe growing up, productivity was praised more than curiosity. Achievement mattered. Results mattered. Usefulness mattered. If you were doing something, it needed to lead somewhere, improve something, prove something. So your nervous system adapted. You learned that time should be optimized, that effort should be strategic, that energy should produce measurable outcomes. And hobbies don't promise outcomes. They don't guarantee progress. They don't always make you impressive. They don't necessarily move your life forward. They simply exist for the experience itself. If your identity formed around being efficient, responsible, or high-performing, unstructured enjoyment can feel uncomfortable, even wasteful. There's also another layer that often goes unnoticed. Hobbies require beginner energy. They require you to be bad at something, to fumble, to create without mastery, to practice without applause. If you grew up being criticized when you failed, compared when you struggled, or praised only when you succeeded, your brain may have learned a quiet rule. Don't do what you can't excel at. So instead of exploring, you refined what you were already good at. Instead of experimenting, you optimized. Instead of playing, you performed. Over time, that performance becomes your comfort zone. Work feels clear. Responsibilities feel structured. Goals feel defined. But hobbies feel undefined. They don't have metrics. They don't have deadlines. They don't have external validation built in. And if your nervous system is calibrated to clarity and evaluation, undefined spaces can feel strangely destabilizing. There's also emotional exhaustion. Some people don't have hobbies not because they lack interest, but because they lack surplus energy. When your mental bandwidth is constantly consumed by responsibility, anxiety, or internal pressure, the idea of adding something extra feels overwhelming. A hobby, in theory, is restorative. But to someone already stretched thin, it feels like another demand, another commitment, another thing to maintain. So you default to passive recovery instead, scrolling, watching, distracting. Not because you don't care about growth, but because your system is trying to conserve energy. Midway through this realization, something important becomes clear. The absence of hobbies isn't a personality flaw. It's often a protection strategy. Your mind learned to prioritize safety, productivity, or efficiency. It learned to avoid vulnerability. It learned to minimize exposure to judgment. And hobbies, at their core, are vulnerable spaces. They reveal what you like without guarantee of approval. They expose your beginner phase. They show your preferences without strategic advantage. That can feel raw. But here's the quiet shift. You are not someone without depth just because you don't list activities. You are someone whose system has been optimized for stability. And stability is not the same thing as emptiness. Sometimes, people without hobbies are highly disciplined, highly responsible, highly aware. They carry weight. They manage pressure. They think ahead. What looks like lack of interest from the outside can actually be hyper-focus on survival, performance, or emotional regulation. Imagine your inner world like a tightly organized desk. Everything has a place. Everything has a function. Nothing unnecessary is allowed to take up space. Hobbies are like leaving a blank notebook open in the middle of that desk. No assignment, no evaluation, no required outcome. Just possibility. If you've spent years surviving through structure, that blank page can feel unfamiliar. Not wrong, just unfamiliar. And unfamiliar things often get interpreted as unnecessary. So if you don't have hobbies, it doesn't mean you lack passion. It might mean your system has been protecting you from exposure, from inefficiency, from vulnerability. It might mean you were wired to prioritize control over curiosity. And that wiring made sense at some point in your life. The deeper truth is this: your identity is not defined by how you fill your weekends. You are not incomplete because you don't have a creative outlet. You are not behind because you don't collect skills for leisure. You are someone shaped by experiences that taught you what felt safe. And sometimes safety looks like productivity. Sometimes it looks like exhaustion. Sometimes it looks like simply getting through the week. The absence of hobbies is not an accusation. It's information. Information about how you learned to survive, how you learned to be valued, how you learned to structure your time. And when you see it that way, the shame dissolves. Because this was never about being interesting enough. It was about being safe enough. And that is a very different story.